Good evening, Facebook. My name is Chuck Fagan, and this is a special presentation of the Better Savannah Facebook page. Tonight, we are joined by both candidates running for the 8th District County Commission in Chatham County, Georgia. I'm pleased to be joined by Mr. Kenneth Adams and Mr. Gary Monroe. Kenny and Gary have agreed to join this afternoon and early evening with their time to answer our questions, give the voters that follow our page a chance to see their platforms so that people who are getting their ballots in the next few weeks that requested those mail-in absentee ballots can go ahead and make their decisions. So we're going to get to the candidates in just a moment. As a reminder, Better Savannah is the area's leading independent expenditure committee focused on better public policy outcomes here at the local level. Tonight, we'll be discussing county issues as well as state and regional and local issues as well that are going to be coming up before the county commission during the next term. Just by nature of alphabetical order, I'm going to turn to Mr. Kenny Adams here to give him 3 or 4 minutes to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about him, why he's running for the county commission 8th district post this year, and a little bit about his platform. Go ahead, Kenny.
Thank you, Chuck. Good evening, and thank you, Better Savannah, for the opportunity to let your viewers get some information about me. My name is Kenneth Adams. I'm a candidate for the commissioner for the 8th district. I'm a native Savannian, and the 8th district has been my home for many, many years. I was born here, I was raised here. Now I'm back living here, which in West Savannah, which is a second home to me. I am married to Kelly Robinson Adams. I'm the father of 4 and grandfather of 12. I'm the publisher of the Savannah Herald newspaper, started by my grandfather, Floyd Pressboy Adams Sr. in 1945. I'm the son of the late Mayor Floyd Adams Jr., and he has pretty much reared me to be this commissioner. Being in a household with him has given me pretty much the legacy and DNA to fulfill this election process of being the commissioner for the 8th district. I want better for the 8th district. I want economic equity, better jobs, community inclusion, working with the neighborhoods, and cleaner and safer neighborhoods for our youth and seniors, along with added police protection. I will be accessible and accountable, along with being the public servant that I am. Elect Kenneth Adams, 8th District County Commissioner, June 9th, or you can fill out your absentee ballot like I got mine today and send it in before June 9th, please. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for introducing yourself to us here tonight, Kenny Adams. Gary Monroe, please take a few minutes here, 3 or 4 minutes, to introduce yourself to the audience that's following our broadcast live and those who will watch this broadcast later.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Chuck, for having me here on your platform to discuss the my platform agenda and what I would hope to bring for the 8th District County seat of Chatham County. Yes, I am Gary Monroe, and I'm running for the 8th District County Commissioner seat of Chatham County. You know, I'm not here to be a politician as much as it is to serve people. It's not an ambition of mine. It's a higher calling that I'm seeking to fulfill. I have group boots on the ground as we speak today. I am the president of the Garden City Homestead Association, which represents the indigenous Black communities of the city of Garden City. I currently serve on the Garden City's Zoning and Planning Commission, where for the last 2 years, I was the commission chair, and I've served on that commission for 8 years. So I have experience in policies and procedures, protocols, and understand city ordinances and in conversations and conduct. I also am the founder of Impact Academy. It is a school in Bermuda, and it is in this 18th year. I founded it. It was named Basic Academy, but it is currently called Impact Academy, a school for boys. I've been mentoring and assisting and helping young men in the Garden City area and the West Savannah area for over 30 years, helping young men to matriculate to grown men. My platform agenda is, particularly as we look at this current situation and time that we're in, my platform agenda is PPE, and that's prioritization planning and essential development and growth. And I think that if we're going to do anything of lasting value in the 8th district, and there has to, it has to be, the 8th district has to be a priority. And so that's the first thing I want to bring to the table is, and for the residents of the 8th district, I want to make them, their district, their communities, their way of life, their quality of life, I want to make it a priority. In order to do that, it's going to take planning, strategic planning. And that's going to be planning and working with the various elected officials who represents those municipalities that the 8th district covers, as well as community organizations and residents and constituents of the 8th district, working with them to find out what type of development would they like to see transpire in their community. And lastly, sustainable essential development and growth. We need in the 8th district, like never before, if nothing else, grocery stores. That's going to be a paramount fight for me to see about getting grocery stores in the 8th district, along with other essential businesses and opportunities for the population. I think this is how we can begin to turn the curve of poverty in the 8th district, which is unfortunately the most impoverished district in the county. And so I'm running on that platform with your vote for 8th District County Commission. We can not only make, this is not about making a dream of mine come true, but we can make your wishes and your desires come to fruition if you live in the 8th District of Chatham County.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. And again, thank you both for joining us this afternoon and early evening. Gary, I want to start with you on the questions. The recent city elections were historic as voters threw out every incumbent except for Dr. Shabazz, who was unopposed. This also included a new alder woman for the first time in 16 years on the west side of Savannah in the 8th district on the county side. What's your takeaway from the dramatic city elections that recently happened, and what do you think that means for the county elections this year?
Well, change is good when it is good, and it is even better when it works for the greater good of the people. But only time can tell. Certainly, as COVID-19 has come upon all of us, it has changed somewhat the scope of governance for those who have been newly elected. So again, it only time will be able to tell what those elected officials, with it being a clean slate for the most part, what's going to be the outcome of their service. Now, I know a lot of these individuals personally, and we know the charge in which they ran on, and the energy and the platform and the experience and the knowledge that they brought to the table. We can only project that this will work out good for the people. And, it speaks volumes, and hopefully it'll speak volumes on a larger scale to the county that people want change. And people want change, and people are not satisfied with government as is. And so maybe that will translate to the county level, where there is a dramatic outcome in this 2020 election cycle.
Great, thank you. Thank you for those thoughts and answers. Kenny, let me throw the same question at you and give you a few minutes to respond. But I also want to get your thoughts on this. Almost every city council candidate campaigned on bringing about term limits for the city aldermen. Some think it should be 2, some think it should be 3. Do you think that we should be doing the same thing for the county commissioners, and we should term limit them as well? But also, what are your takes on the dramatic city elections. We have, for the first time ever, 5 African-American women on our city council forever. So ever. So I just want your take on the recent elections. And again, what are your thoughts on term limits?
Well, it's great that we did have some turnover in the city. I know all of them personally. I can work with them. I have worked with them. I think it'll be great for the city and the county that we work all together to make this a better place for all of us to live. As far as term limits, I'm in favor of term limits. I think that right now we have some people that were on city council and that were on the commissioners board that probably have been there longer than they should have been, but it's time that they know that they can only stay there for a certain amount of time and that they can groom another person to come in and make it better instead of just staying there stagnant, not doing what they need to do for their communities.
Gary, sorry, I'm gonna have to switch headphones here. I've been doing too many of these all day, guys. Sorry about the technical difficulties. But Gary, okay. Recently the mayor stated that the county was too small to have its own bonding authority. But if you look at the county M&O budget, it's actually larger than the city's general fund budget by a little bit, by like 10 or 12 million per year. And recently they've had to enter into intergovernmental agreements with the city's bonding authority. Do you think that the county should have its own capacity to borrow for capital projects, specifically when we're talking about community benefits agreements possibilities? Don't you think the county should have its own authority to issue bonds?
Well, it's not just about having its own authority to issue bonds. The county or any municipal government should have itself in the best position to be able to meet the demands. Its financial demands and obligations, as well as the services it is to provide for its citizens. So essentially anything that will put the county in a better position, if being able to have authority over issuing its own bonds will put the county in a better position to be able to meet its financial obligations, as well as to meet the needs of the constituents without per se it's having a negative impact on policy or budgetary concerns of the county, or you just don't want to make a change and it also has a negative impact on, say, the city of Savannah or the other municipalities or their residents. And certainly you don't want to make change that's going to have a negative impact, whether short-term or long-term, for the constituents overall. But for me, again, I'm for policy first and foremost, that yes, that's going to work for the people, but that also it has to put the county in the best position to be able to work for the people.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Kenneth, Kenny, I want to move on and talk about SPLOST.
Okay.
The SPLOST balloting language, the language that goes onto the voters' ballots on whether they should vote for SPLOST up or down, that ballot language is controlled at the county. Okay, so we want to get into some specifics on what are your goals or what are your ideas on SPLOST reforms. The first question is going to be, would you support requiring disclosure on the ballot for projected maintenance costs of SPLOST projects? One example is the Aquatic Center, which I think, costs something like 8% per year of the original project cost just to maintain. So would you support requiring some additional disclosures on the SPLOST balloting in the future for what these projects will cost to maintain?
I would, Chuck, because with the COVID-19, we're going to probably have a shortfall. So being that said, you would probably need to ask more SPLOST money to these projects for maintenance, because it's not going to make sense to build these things and not be able to maintain them. And with the shortfall we're going to see, we definitely need to change the language on this SPLOST initiative.
Gary, a follow-up question, and we're in this section on SPLOST right now. So, anything on these few questions that you want to talk about are open rein for you. But a lot of the constraints of SPLOST are in the state law. There's a lot of, honestly, the state law in itself is an impediment to a lot of progress here in Chatham County, and I'm perfectly willing to accept part of that as reality. But another question would you support a legislative change that would allow cities and counties to either borrow some amount from SPLOST deposits when a statewide emergency has occurred, or would you allow some form of safety or deposit or reserves balance be used from SPLOST? Would you allow some thing to be changed? The Chatham County government has not had a lobbyist in about 6 years because the current chairman said he could do it himself, right? So we're not having a lot of progress on these things, and now when it comes time to an emergency, we've got these hundreds of millions of dollars sitting over here in SPLOST accounts gaining interest, but we're not really doing anything with that money during the middle of a crisis. So why don't you tell me some of your thoughts on SPLOST reform?
Right. Well, let me address the first issue on SPLOST. Well, I guess it's a matter of transparency as far as making these expenditures and maintenance and operational costs visible to the public. Whether the county as well as all municipalities have public records, and the county has a fiscal budget. They have a SPLOST report, annual CAFA report, and the county also has a revenue ordinance that is for FY19 2020 that residents are able to look at. Now, in essence, to being able to address SPLOST funding and maintenance operations to particular projects as they occur, there ought to be opportunities for the public to be able to chime in where the county or the commission is updating and keeping the people informed, as well as giving the people opportunity to have some dialogue on those particular projects and projections. Now, regarding say emergency funding, I know most municipalities, I don't know if at the county level, that they have to have 25% of their operating budget has to go in a contingency fund or reserve. And so with that being said, if the county's 2020 budget is $203 million, that's essentially that the county needs to have set aside about $50.7 million for contingencies and emergencies. Now, with that being directly related to SPLOST funds, something could be done with the SPLOST funds for whatever the balance of that account is with the SPLOST. We can say in your budgetary process that you go ahead and state whether it's 5% of your budgetary funds are set aside for contingencies and emergency, because that has to be in place with the government. A government has to be able to maintain itself for 3 months, in the minimum 3 to 6 months. So that's why you have that 25%.
Sure, and not to interrupt you, because I want to give you a follow-up question here, so I can get you to answer something in the time we have before I switch back to Kenny. Will you support hiring a full-time lobbyist for the Chatham County government that can be advocating for these changes in state law so that we might be better prepared for the next crisis after COVID-19?
Well, I think that's where you talk about collaboration with, the body of elected officials for the city of Savannah, working and having working relationships with them, where you need working relationship with your state representatives when you consider Buddy Carter and Lester Jackson and Carl Gilliard. I would assume they are supposed to be essentially your lobbyists for Chatham County, for Savannah, Garden City, Pooler, Port Wentworth, and so on and so forth. But I think, in essence, to say hiring a lobbyist, I would look at it from as we go process. in essence, to if we have something that we are trying to get done here in Savannah, and it requires a lobbyist to take this to the state level, then we look into it as need basis in that sense. And I can say that, as I stated for the elected official, that we would definitely have a lobbyist in Joyce Marie Griggs. No doubts about that at the state level.
Unfortunately, we are a state and local government independent expenditure committee, so we do not participate in any federal election campaigning. But I do appreciate those answers. Kenny, in the last SPLOST last year, in SPLOST 7, voters in Savannah approved, the Savannah had language approving $10 million towards an affordable housing fund. But as has been discussed in some previous interviews, there's some other candidates made some really good points that there's not a lot of space left to build homes, affordable housing in Savannah. So what's the county prepared to do about affordable housing over the next 5 to 10 years? If waiting for the next SPLOST round in 6 years is too long, where are you going to get revenue to fund something like this? And what should the county's role be in an affordable housing project?
Well, we're going to have to be innovative. We're going to have to find new ways for revenue because, like I said earlier, we're probably going to wind up with a shortfall. You talked before about, we had a conversation about impact fees. That may be one way to get it, but it may also turn some investors off. But they can always push it towards the investor as well, take it out of their cut of the pie. But we're going to definitely have to be very innovative in getting some more revenue into the county. Low income housing, it's needed. It's needed because with the way prices of realty are right now, a lot of people can't afford it on what they're bringing home.
And I think we're going to talk about impact fees and other sources of revenue in another section here. Let me ask you a follow-up question, Kenny. If the city of Savannah deemed the arena project infeasible and decided to put that project back up on the ballot for voters to decide whether to keep moving forward with it, remembering that all SPLOST ballots are county-wide ballots,
yes,
would you as a county voter vote to continue to build this arena, knowing what you know now after the COVID pandemic and how much this is going to change life?
Right now, I would probably say no, because we don't know what's going to go on, but those monies are already there. So I would say it'll probably be a project that will continue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Gary, I want to bring some of these questions over to you. What do you think the county's role in affordable housing should be? Because the city put some money in their SPLOST section, but, you know, the county was busy, you know, updating the jail and courthouse annexes and things like that. So, what, you know, knowing that the city doesn't have a whole lot of room to build, the county unincorporated area does. What's the county's role in affordable housing?
Well, every municipality or governmental body has a role in affordable housing, particularly for the mere fact that we have unincorporated areas in Chatham County. So what do you do about that segment of your population that you have? They're not in Pooler, they're not in Port Wentworth, they're not in on Tybee or Thunderbolt. They're in unincorporated Chatham County. And so, yes, I think the county has a responsibility to what degree based on revenue. And again, it's all predicated, you know, they should be involved and they should be allocating funds. But again, given COVID-19, it's a matter of how do we approach this now when we have priority now after we have flattened the curve. The next thing is now how do we stimulate and reopen the economy, reopen the city the county and the state, and then stimulate the economy. So those things are going to be paramount. And once we're able to address those things, then we can begin to look at addressing affordable housing. And you begin with, I've always been a strong proponent of, first of all, looking at and enhancing your in-place assets. So let's look what we already have working for us. And then we talk about land, location, and value. Let's look at our in-place assets and see what we are able to garner and gain from that which is already in place, and or just adding to it, and how do we build out from that. And I think that's where we can begin and seeing how do we streamline our resources.
Let me ask you a quick follow-up question before we move on from the SPLOST topic. As a county voter and a potential county commissioner, if the city of Savannah deemed the arena project infeasible and put it back up on the ballot to be voted down to potentially pay off, old city debts, for example, which is legal under the state law right now, would you support ending the arena as a voter, knowing what you know so far about this crisis and how it's changed life so far?
Well, if a decision is based on how you put it, it's almost like a no-brainer. If you're saying that the city,
I agree,
staff has stated that it's a no-brainer, and then you put it on the ballot and the people are against it, what is there to contend?
I do think that the council would have to vote for it right now. I think there's some public pressure that needs. I think it's a very relevant thing to be talking about right now, Gary. I mean, I really do. The single largest public project in Chatham County history, in a time where we have no idea when arenas will be culturally relevant again. I don't see Elton John coming to play that arena anytime soon, like he would play Johnny Mercer just a few years ago. Kenny, do you want to jump in on any of this right now?
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah. It's not just. I think they still can play a relevant part. Is how we can go about using them for the greater good of the local populace. So, outside of saying looking for Elton John to come in or bringing in entertainment of sort, how can we make this also a center in the community, that the community can, whether there are entrepreneurial opportunities for the immediate community, office spaces being rented out. So we have to make it communal centered. As you stated, things have changed. So it's not going to be, we don't know how performers are going to be doing concerts and going forward. So I think if we look at making it communal focus, city focus, county focus, of how we, the residents, can get the best use out of it, and the community it still can be a worthy cause.
Kenny, I want to give you a chance to just weigh in on this topic one more time. I think it's on the minds of a lot of voters in the last week because of the last city council meeting, and I would urge you both to collaborate with the first district alderwoman, because I'm not sure that right now, Gary, that those communal benefits are being put in place on that project to make it still make sense, like I think you're indicating. But Kenny, do you have any closing thoughts on SPLOST in general, this arena project, all of the things that we've just talked about?
Yeah, well, on the arena project, I think it might be best to be put on hold with the way things are going with COVID-19, but I don't know if that's going to be feasible with the current city council. Some of them may have already made promises that they can't go back on, but they need to look at what's best for the community right now. And putting that project on hold may be what's best, because we don't know how the rest of the SPLOST may be funded.
Yeah, I think a very fair point. Projects.
Go ahead, Gary. That's a very fair point.
On a lot of projects, I think going back, it just makes common sense to put a moratorium on a lot of things until we can find our way. So it's not just saying.
I agree, and I don't mean to single this one project out.
Right.
I definitely oppose moving forward for a bond with the courthouse annex right now. I don't know any civil court cases that are ongoing at this moment. I do think you're right to say that there are many capital projects that should be reevaluated for both feasibility and common sense in terms of where we're going in our budgeting as we go through fiscal year 2021 and 2022. Gary, I want to move on to a new topic. We can talk as much as we want about a few more things, but I want to start with you because the next topic is the Port of Savannah. You are ILA 1414. They have a long history here. I want to start with you on this topic because, the GPA, Georgia Ports Authority, says that they will double in size and capacity. I think it was 2 years ago they said 10 years. So I would imagine in the next 8 or 9 years, they will meet that goal of doubling the capacity of the port. Given the impact to long-term residents of this community in terms of congestion, wear and tear on the roads that we pay for outside of the state roads, and the pollution, quite frankly, why is it sustainable for the port to grow that fast, that hard, without any permanent revenue to the county and to the city?
Yeah, while the ports generate billions of dollars, over $60 million of direct household income and statewide, the Southeast here, it does and it adds bring a lot of added value to the region. Infrastructure does take a hit, particularly when you look at Garden City and the West Savannah area, where the 8th District takes a big hit, Port Wentworth. Understanding essentially a little bit how the government works is the government is in the business of providing services. Those services are funded through the allocation of budgetary funds. A budget is funded through revenue. A city, unlike any other business, generates revenue through services that different services that it provides. So it's not making a product. So we have to come up with innovative ideas how to generate revenue. And certainly in a time like this, the county, each municipality, but particularly the county, are going to have to revisit because we don't know when the economy starts back up. When we look at our tax digest and we evaluate our greatest revenue source, we don't know, fines and forfeitures, property taxes are going to be down. All of these things are going to be down. So we're going to have to revisit how we're going to be able to just, meet our budgetary obligations. So if evaluating that, looking as far as saying generating funds from the ports or different entities around the county and city, because we got a county to run and maintain.
Thank you, Gary. And we're going to stay on this topic of revenue versus current revenues that the county gets versus potential revenues. We're going to stay in this kind of port impact fees kind of area for a few questions in a little while here. Kenny, the Port of Savannah sunsetted port container fees during your father's tenure on the city of Savannah as mayor in the late 90s. I believe former Mayor Eddie DeLoach was on the county commission. I believe even that the 7th District Commissioner, Dean Kicklighter, might have been there during that phase too. And they sunsetted those fees to make the port more competitive. By all accounts, we are amongst the most competitive ports in the world now. So similar topic, same question. Will you support negotiating with the Port of Savannah, the Georgia Ports Authority, via the delegation and a lobbyist by any means necessary? Will you work to get permanent recurring revenue for the county and the main municipalities that are affected by the growth of the port, especially Garden City, Port Wentworth, and Savannah, which you'll be representing?
Yes, sir, I will. We would probably have to leave that up to the state legislators because that's their ballpark. But we also need to look at it locally as how it affects our health, our environment, and just jobs in general. So it's a touchy subject, but we definitely need to look into it.
And let me reiterate again.
Go ahead, Gary.
That your government essentially can determine the quality of life for, it determines that to a large extent. And it offers services, it provides services, and it needs revenue to provide these services that affords us a quality of life outside of our, picket fence. And when you take that into consideration, I recall when Garden City was looking to annex the Silk Hope Salt Creek area, and there was an old gentleman that got up in favor of, because Garden City didn't once have property taxes, but he got up and he spoke in favor of property taxes. An elderly gentleman, of all people, you would think would be against it. And he said, well, I grew up in the Great Depression. I remember having an outhouse. I remember not having running water, city water. I remember not having the luxuries and amenities that the government provides and affords them the quality of life. And he says, listen, I don't want to go back to that lifestyle again. And he says, I'm enjoying my quality of life. So sometimes you have to implement, whether it's to say for the ports or to be able to generate the resources so we can provide the quality of life that the citizens desire and deserve.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that answer. I'll be back in just a second. Kenny, something like 84% of the county's revenue is property taxes. If you compare that to the city's budget, the city only derives about 40% of its revenue from property taxes. So knowing that in the fiscal 2021 and especially 2022 fiscal years, we're likely to take a large hit to that tax digest on the property tax revenue, where outside of, property tax increases, where else are you ready to get revenue from? Are you ready to put franchise fees on Georgia Power and EMC bills? Are we ready to look at impact fees for new construction? Just talk about some of the places that you'll look to get revenue prior to raising taxes or cutting services during your term because of this pandemic.
Chuck, we probably might have to look at cutting some services. I hate to say it, but we're probably going to have to look at that. And I wouldn't be in favor of raising taxes during this time, or any time really. We're going to have to come up with some innovative ideas, like you said, the impact fee. But it's kind of hard to do the impact fee if it's going to hurt people coming in to invest, because they're not going to want to lessen their profits, and they really probably don't want to pass it on to the consumer. But we're going to have to be really innovative on how we can create some more revenue. I don't know. It may we go back to the porch thing. You may have to look at the tax on the containers, tax on the truckers, which they probably don't want, with a toll just for those roads going in and out. But it's going to be real tricky.
Gary, I want to bring you in right here because we've been talking about this in some of our interviews. There are a myriad of county roads that I would call arteries off of the main veins coming in and out of the port. As you indicated, the 8th District probably has some of the poorest conditions of roads. You might agree with that, living there for a long time. If the Georgia Ports Authority is not willing to negotiate in good faith and our delegation is unable to get us results, will you allow toll roads to be set up to at least extract money directly from the port and the truckers to repay for those maintenance of those roads?
Well, let me say also that looking at being innovative and generating other streams of revenue, I think also, again, I'm a strong proponent of looking at your in-place assets. And what we can do initially is look to grow your tax digest. If you grow your tax digest and tax base, you're going to generate long-term revenue in and of itself. That's industrially, that's commercially, and that's residentially. We spoke of housing, but
and I'm going to give you a chance. Let me put something in here real quick, and I'm going to let you respond because I want you to get your full time to respond here. But we've just witnessed over the last 8 years the largest growth in the tax digest in the history of Chatham County, and that's not going to happen anymore during these next 4 years, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think this recession brought on by the coronavirus pandemic will make this term that you are running for this 4-year term, perhaps over the next 8 to 10, it will come back around. But for this term, I think we are unlikely to see hardly any growth. If anything, we'll see a shrinkage in the tax digest value. So again, knowing that that's likely the case for these 4 years, what are you willing to do? What's your first go-to? Is it cutting services, raising the millage rate, or looking for alternative sources of revenue like some permanent revenue from the port or impact fees? What's your first go-to?
Well, the first two you said is definitely for me, your last option, saying cutting services and raising millage rate. Those are definitely your last options. And so again, yes, by default of what we have experienced, there is a cause and effect that's going to happen. That's going to impact the tax digest tremendously, that we can't do anything about it because we've lost that revenue already. But in going forward, that's what I'm alluding to as far as saying what this COVID also has indicated is that we need to invest back in production here stateside. Savannah, with all of its manufacturers, a lot of them have closed. We could begin to, again, look at ways that we can bring investors in. The counties, cities can invest in trying to get these corporations with different types of productions to meet the essential needs today. But to the large part, yes, I think everybody would have an opportunity, should have an opportunity to pay their fair chance in making for a better community. And that's the industries, that's commercialization. If the residents are having to foot the bill of the quality of life, and we can't allow industry to come in and disrupt that quality of life and then take the resources and leave, I think they have a part to play in being able to sustain that quality of life as well.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you for those answers. Kenny, along these same lines, you mentioned that we may have to cut some services. And I think you're probably right about that. What would you consider to be non-essential services at the county government right now that we might be able to cut some budget in because of this crisis?
Oh boy, that's going to be a rough one, Chuck. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one, because right now everything is essential, but we just have to look at what's best to be cut, and I can't say that right now.
Let me ask you another question, Kenny, and I think it's perfectly fair not to know what to cut right now. I do think knowing that you're going to have a balance of cutting some things that are unnecessary, but also raising revenue elsewhere. I think it's going to have to be both of those together at once. So we'll move on, though. I want to ask you, especially, you come from a very, very strong political family, obviously. And, I think a lot of people are very challenged with the lack of leadership from the county, not just over the last 4 to 8 weeks with this pandemic response or lack thereof. I think the chairman was very late to really react and start publicly communicating or activating SEMA in response to this COVID-19 crisis. But even before that, like I said, the county controls the SPLOST balloting language. Just like in you guys' race for the 8th district, there are 2 candidates running in the Democratic primary for Chatham County chairman. What are you looking for in the next chairman that maybe you don't see in the current chairman? What are you looking for in the next chairman of the county commission that's going to be dealing and leading this board through this crisis?
Probably Probably flexibility, working closer with the other commissioners. That's pretty much it, Chuck. So that we can all get along and all work for Chatham County. Just needs to be more communications and flexibility, I think.
Do you think Chairman Scott's been a little inflexible over the last 8 years?
Probably on some issues, but I really can't say because I hadn't worked with him that closely at the county issues. You probably would have to ask some commissioners that are on there now that question.
Well, as you know, Gary, one of the candidates for chairman is the predecessor for this 8th district seat, Commissioner Chester Ellis. I want to ask you the same thing. I think there's been a lot of complaints about the leadership at the county over the last 8 years. I think some are valid, some might be blown out of proportion. But certainly in the last 8 weeks, there's been a very clear failure in communicating from the county level, especially because the county controls SEMA, Chatham Emergency Management Agency. Mayor Johnson seemingly had a lot of foresight in canceling the St. Patrick's Day Parade, but the county was nowhere to be heard from. So I want your thoughts on the county's leadership over the last 8 years. Obviously, that's why you're running to help contribute to some better leadership. But tell us your thoughts on what you're looking for in the next chairman as well.
Yes, someone who can lead, someone who's not afraid to lead, someone who's not afraid to meet the challenges. Sometimes my father once said that when you decide to be a man in your house, that can be a lonely place, because sometimes you have to make tough decisions. And sometimes those tough decisions may go against the grain for the greater good of where you're trying to go or where you're wanting your family to go. And it's the same thing. So you need someone who can make those decisions, but at the same time, someone who understands policy, someone who's innovative, someone who has the skill set and knowledge, the know-with-all, as well as who has the rapport to be able to sit down with not only their fellow colleagues, they have to be open up to talk and communicate with their colleagues along with the constituents to be able to come to reasonable solutions in that respect and regard. So you have to be a strong leader. You have to be someone who's willing to stand up, but at the same time, you got to be willing to sit down with your colleagues and your constituents.
Thank you for that answer, Kenny. A question here. The county commission makes a variety of appointments to boards and authorities. Perhaps the most important one is to the board of the Savannah Economic Development Authority, aka SEDA. So the Savannah Economic Development Authority makes deals on behalf of the Chatham County government, the Savannah government, and the school board to give property tax abatements, sometimes for 20 to 30 years in exchange for new jobs. Yet there is no independent verification of the number of jobs created and the salaries associated with those jobs. Will you support changing the county ordinance that enables the intergovernmental agreement between the county and SEDA to require a yearly independent audit of all of the contracts for jobs and salaries that SEDA's clients have promised the county?
I will seek that, Chuck, because like we always say, you need to find out what's going on. They need to be just need to have the information out there so that we can know that they're doing what they're doing for the benefits that they're giving away. Because if we don't know it, they don't know it. Well, they probably know it, but they're not willing to share it. Because we have to get a better bang for our buck for what we're giving SEDA. And to me, SEDA is almost like a lobbyist for the county, bringing in new businesses, and making promises. But Do those promises always benefit Chatham County? So I'm in favor of an audit.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. Gary, I want to ask the same question to you.
Yeah.
SEDA, Savannah Economic Authority, they create deals for private sector jobs to bring, for businesses to bring jobs to the area, but there is no independent audit, it's a self-audit for how many jobs are actually created and what those salaries are. Will you support amending the ordinance to require an independent audit of all of the SEDA contracts for their clients?
I support any system that will bring about a checks and balance. No governmental entity should have complete autonomy to just do what they want to do without a checks and balance or answerability or accountability. So certainly if you're doing work on behalf of the county, there ought to be some checks and balance, whether it's a quarterly report, annual report, I guess something to that effect would be more effective if it's quarterly or bi-quarterly in that respect or regard. But in essence, too, as you're saying, on a long-term, more strategic significance and audits, I think something of that degree would be important to be able to make sure that what they have been established to do, they are doing it and doing it in the most efficient capacity.
For the most part, Gary, I will stick with you here, but I'm going to bring this question back to you as well in a moment, Kenny. For the most part, for the 10 or so odd years I've been here, and people much longer than that have confirmed the same, most of these appointments to boards and authorities like this are, essentially a revolving door of, who's who connected to major industry and development and, kind of the status quo, the go along to get along. There's a lot of phrases for it, Gary. What are you looking for in people to put in these appointments that will show the voters that you have a different mindset than previous commissions that have appointed these same people? And I just want to point out for this conversation, gentlemen, the poverty rate in Chatham County, 17.3%. 20 years ago, it was essentially the same. On the poverty side, we are not moving the needle. What needs to change in these appointments, and how are people going to know that you're different? Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, first of all, if you have the voluntarism and people getting involved is one thing. You recruiting people to get involved, that's a whole nother thing. So you don't know if it's a matter of these people are constantly being revolving because there are no others who are looking to say get involved, but I doubt that is the case. I serve on an appointment board as the zoning and planning of Garden City, and there were times where I disapprove of the fact that you were bringing people back that had served 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and things had progressed. And so you got to be able to bring in new ideas. There needs to be a resume submitted. It shouldn't just be that we submit names and based on favoritism and based on who's who, we say appoint this person or that. There ought to be something submitted that the person can show that they're bringing something to offer to this particular board for the purpose of its establishment. And because again, I've seen people come on these boards and nothing of material value has come out of it. And I think in many cases, all what's needed is new ideas, new innovations, new input, and new value. And so, yes, I'm open to that and would seek to drive. I was in a forum recently. How do you get people to get involved? And that's what we can do. We can have forums that we go and we let people know that these boards exist and seek to recruit people to come out, and then we vet those individuals.
Thank you, Gary. Just one more question for you guys. We're getting towards the end of our agreed upon time, about an hour here into the broadcast. And I just want to ask you, Kenny, Over the last decade, something like 8 inmates have died at the Chatham County Jail while in the care of our government, and both the previous sheriff and the current sheriff. I understand there are some constitutional and legal issues. What are your thoughts on what the county should be doing in terms of oversight on the sheriff? And you know, do you think there's been a problem at the jail in healthcare when 8 inmates die in a 10-year period?
Well, I think the county may be in a place where they can bring the sheriff before them on more than just when he wants to come for his budget. Have him bring quarterly reports on what's going on at the jail, and also on a health basis. He should just not have free hand out there. Bring him to make his reports. Bring us up to speed on things. And then we can go forward from there to give better service out there. Because it not just makes the sheriff's office look bad, but it makes the county look bad when people are dying out there.
Thank you, Kenny. Gary, do you want to respond to the same question before we move to closing thoughts?
Yeah, of course, it is relevant to the cases that happen. But I think just from remembering when a lot of these things were happening, you say it was relevant to healthcare. Outside of it saying 2 inmates getting in an altercation and someone losing their lives or someone is sick. But I think in essence too, it had to do with response, diagnosis, and treatment. And it's got to have the proper protocol in place that when we have different illnesses, or if there's a fight, or we know that there are 2 inmates that are say enemies of one another, then we got to have protocol in place to be able to initiate our response. And then essentially a proper diagnosis, make sure we have an efficient staff. If there's mental illness involved, to be able to diagnose and then treat adequately, or effectively treat inmates, say with mental illnesses and things, a sickness or disease of something to that effect. But we got to have, again, I'm a strong believer in checks and balances where no one entity should just have complete autonomy to do whatever it desires to do without checks and balance.
Thank you. Well, guys, it's been a great hour. I really appreciate your time. This was an extremely efficient forum that I want to make sure that you get a chance to put some closing thoughts together here for the voters. Again, you know, most ballots are being mailed out here in the next 3 to 4 weeks. If you haven't received one already and you requested one, you are likely to receive one. Kenny, why don't you give us your closing thoughts? Again, Mr. Kenneth Adams running for the 8th District. Please give us your closing statement.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you to Better Savannah for hosting this event tonight. My name is Kenneth Adams. I'm running for 8th District County Commissioner. I have lived the life of an elected official, even though I was not elected, through my father, Floyd Adams Jr., who was the first African-American mayor of Savannah. I have people come through my business every day that let me know their problems. I try to help as best I can. I'm here to serve them for the next 4 years as the 8th District County Commissioner. I will continue to listen, learn, and fight for citizens, for all the citizens, for the betterment of the 8th District. I want better economics, businesses, cleaner and safer neighborhoods, along with low-income housing and better drainage for the 8th District. Thank you for the platform again, Chuck. Everyone stay safe and stay home. Again, my name is Kenneth Adams. Vote for me as your 8th District County Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny, and thank you again for joining us. Gary, could you please give us your closing thoughts here? And then I will just give a quick house update on a couple of the things we're working on right now, and I'll take us out. Go ahead, Gary.
Yes, Chuck, thank you for this opportunity to share this platform and to discuss the issues of Chatham County, as well as to communicate my platform agenda and what I would like to bring to the county and the citizens of Chatham County, and particularly those in the 8th district. Oftentimes, and it's not an anomaly, but we understand that the 8th district is one of the vulnerable districts. It's one of the most impoverished districts, and it's the district that gets overlooked the most. And I want to make sure that this district is no longer overlooked. I want to prioritize, I want to devise a plan, and I want to see that we have the essential needs in our community that are necessary to sustain a vibrant community and that offers a quality community. I already have boots on the ground. I've been serving as Garden City Zoning and Planning Commission, so I understand policy, I understand protocol, I understand how to engage and interact and work along with public officials. I'm the president of the Garden City Homestead Association. I have several things that I'm in discussion with now with regard to one project, the Groves High School project. We have an open dialogue with Dr. Levette regarding that. My community organization is spearheading that, and my voice is at the top of that. And so I'm a community advocate. I believe in fighting for the community, speaking on behalf of the community. And so with my plan, PPE, prioritization, planning, and essential development and growth, I want to make the 8th district a safer community and improve the quality of life in that community. With your vote, whether it's early voting, whether it's through a mail-in ballot, or June 9th, vote Gary Monroe, 8th district, county commission seat, Chatham County 2020. And I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you both. Thank you both for joining us this evening. Again, this has been a special presentation of the Better Savannah page, which is the area's leading independent expenditure committee focused on better public policy, more progressive public policy at the local level here. Just some programming notes. We had 3 sets of interviews today. All of the videos will be there still to review. You can share them. Please like and subscribe to the page. Next Saturday, May 2nd, we'll have our last day of interviews for county commission district candidates. And I think we're going to be reaching out to a few of the state level candidates, since every time we have these interviews, it seems that the state is pretty much the problem on all of our problems here in Chatham County. So we want to interview some of these state rep candidates in some of these open seats and then get them on record to things that they could potentially help our Chatham County Commission. On Saturday, May 16th, we will be hosting a debate forum for the district attorney's candidates in the Democratic primary at 1:30 p.m., followed by a chairman's race primary debate and forum at 5:30 on Saturday, May 16th. So just wanted to drop those programming notes again. This is the Better Savannah page. We appreciate you joining us this evening. Please stay safe, stay home if you can, wash your hands, and socially distance as long as it takes for us to get through this together. Gentlemen, Kenny, Gary, I want to thank you both for your time. We appreciate it, and we're going to end the broadcast now. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, Chuck.